Alrighty, we should be good to go for now. If you want to share your screen, I believe you should have the ability to do so.
Okay. Let me see if this works. Okay, you see my screen?
Yep,
Okay, just let me know when to start and I'll start.
sounds good. I mean, you can start now if you'd like.
Okay, you already started recording?
Yeah,
Okay. So
alrighty.
hi oh, okay. So hi everybody. My name is Fatima and I'm really excited to be talking about how to start a successful business as a high schooler. So first, a little bit about me is that I have done a lot of like entrepreneurial stuff and I've been working in a lot of different fields. As you can see, I worked in the robotics space. I'm in my high school's robotics team as their lead CAD and programmer. And I've done a lot of hackathons in the past, such as at Stanford and Berkeley for bioengineering. And I'm always trying to get involved in my community. So as you can see, I've done a lot of like speaking opportunities, have been on a few podcasts and have done other presentations. And I'm really excited to be kind of bringing all that advice and inspiration to you. So, first, I just want to explain why you should actually start now as a high schooler, as opposed to maybe waiting a little bit longer and starting in college, for example. So, one thing that I learned that a lot of my mentors have told me, and a lot of people who have done really good in these fields, especially at a young age, have told me is if you start early, you will begin to fail early. And as a result, you'll start gaining those success metrics much more earlier in your life, as comparison to maybe your friends or your classmates. Since if they had started later, then of course they would have taken a much more time to actually reach the point that they want to get at. Number two is that as a high schooler, you have so much more free time in comparison to being in college and also having to work a job and being that financially independent. And you get the opportunity to explore a bunch of really cool STEM subjects from your community. Maybe you're taking like, you can take classes from a community college, or you could just join some high school clubs or local clubs that kind of ignite your inspiration for some specific subjects that you may be inspired by. And number three would be to leverage your youth. So when people see like very young people, such as high schoolers, getting involved in these STEM fields really early on, it's a great way to kind of build your reputation and build your portfolio at a young age. And, let's say if you're applying for internships or jobs, they would be more likely to select maybe a high schooler who has the same level of understanding and skill set as comparison to maybe a college student, because you have so much more time to build those skill sets and knowledge. So now you may be wondering, well, how do I actually start building a business, or how do I actually start expanding out into the entrepreneurial space? So number one would be to kind of backtrack from that and just start from baby steps. Don't necessarily jump from one big leap to another. Just start at the bottom. And the first thing I'd recommend doing is just finding your niche, finding what exactly are you inspired by? What do you want to learn more about? What really ignites your curiosity? And that may require you to maybe go out of your comfort zone and explore subjects that you might find interesting, and then reaching out to people in those fields. You can reach out to them by emailing them. Maybe if you have a LinkedIn, that's a great way of reaching out to them because you have your portfolio built there, and they can take a look at what you've done in the past and what you're interested in. And number three is that maybe you want to take some research opportunities to further expand your knowledge on a specific subject or a topic, such as like bioengineering or really just anything else. And number two is you need to understand what will set you apart from the current market that's out there. Right. And this is a little bit later on, once you've really focused in on what you want to learn more about, what you want to continue working on, and what type of impact do you think your work will create. And from there, you can go on into further understanding the problem you're trying to solve. And that may be in the form of various different things, such as, maybe reaching out to people that you're trying to help, or maybe reaching out to other people who are in that specific domain and asking them for their advice or their tips. And number two would be, is there like a market for this niche? That means that, is this really a problem that you're solving? You have to realize that is there really an impact of the problem that you're trying to solve and the work that you're going to put out there in the world? And number three would be to definitely do some thorough research on competitors. So, for example, some questions you can ask yourself while you're doing research is like, what are they doing that you can improve on? So, I'll give you an example. So, when I first started building my first business, which I'll talk about later, it was like it was me 3D printing and CADing and designing child locks from scratch because I have like a baby brother and he just loves messing with my stuff. So I was like, maybe I'll build my own solution for this. So my understanding of research, so my version of doing research on my competitors was like going on Amazon and seeing the current child locks on the market and reading the reviews and specifically reading those 5-star reviews and those 2 and 1-star reviews and seeing what did they need to improve on that I can do and what are they doing really well that I want to continue doing in my new child lock rendition. So there's a lot of ways that you could go on to answering this type of prompt, of course, depending on the niche that you're a part of. If it's a much more impactful niche and if it's a much more competitive sector, such as like bioengineering or something related to STEM, of course, there'd be much more competitors in that specific field. So since STEM is a very growing field. And it's important to realize that with these competitors, usually you will have the upper hand, meaning that since you're a youth, since you're a high schooler, right, since you're starting young, you have the upper hand in those situations since you have so much more time to learn and grow, and people will be more likely to help you in as comparison to maybe somebody who's like much more older and had much more opportunities to build their networking and their research. So when you have the upper hand, definitely leverage that and use that to build a meaningful network. And a great way of building that sort of impactful network where you can learn from others and build meaningful connections is definitely like, for example, creating a LinkedIn account where you can have all your portfolios, all your work experience, volunteerings on that page and being consistent with some sort of online reputation as well as impacting your community. And I want to quickly talk about how I founded my 4 businesses. And one thing to realize is that when you're building these products, speed is very important. So make sure to get that product out there once you've actually started developing it in the world, because as soon as you get feedback, the sooner that you can reiterate on it and the sooner you can improve it. And that can be like sharing it to only just families and friends and getting that input, and then maybe expanding out to other different target audiences. So the first business that I found was Blue Wings Technologies LLC. So basically, so you'll see one common pattern between all these 4 businesses is that I didn't really have an idea of creating a business. It was just that it was a passion that I really enjoyed learning more about. And I was like, oh, I could turn this into an actual business and develop my entrepreneurial side. So you'll see most of the times, not necessarily thinking in the business aspect of things, but just kind of focusing in on the passion and the product, and then the business, the money, and all of that stuff comes at the very end. So the first one is Blue Wings Technologies LLC, and I self-taught my iOS development skills via like YouTube courses and online courses, which I'll talk about later. And then later I registered my entertainment company as an LLC corporation, thus the LLC at the end. And this was basically a company where I just create like entertainment games. So the first one that I created was Blackjack. Jackpot Cards is basically like a blackjack game, but with like a much more minimalistic interface, and just a great way for me to kind of showcase my skills with not only like iOS development, but how like math and probability can play a role into these like card games. And the second one is Unicorn Luck, which I was just talking about. So I also self-taught myself my CAD and engineering and 3D printing skills via like Udemy courses and YouTube, of course. And then before I actually built this product, I first did a lot of CAD projects of my own and got comfortable with, working with all these tools and skills. And then I found a problem that I could solve with 3D printing, which was creating a child lock. And I did several renditions of those instead of several iterations before I actually got it out to the market and started showcasing it to daycares and nannies and stuff. And something important to also mention is that I was also able to like connect with mentors who mainly specialized in like marketing, 3D printing, etc., through LinkedIn and through other connections. And when you are, gaining feedback and developing your product, that's really important to have a mentor or have some sort of guidance in going through the entrepreneurial space, as it can be very overwhelming in the beginning, and having someone just kind of guide you in the right direction is very, very helpful. And then my other two is, my first one is also a 3D printing based business. As you can see, I really do love 3D printing and CAD designing. And you'll see that once you explore different STEM subjects, you'll find something that you really, really enjoy doing, or maybe you've already found something you really enjoy doing and you want to build more upon that. Either way, they're both great ways of, starting a business. So first, Perky 3D prints, I learned that, there's a market for, 3D printed figurines and toys. And I've always, mentioned that I love 3D printing and designing. So kind of merging those two ideas and fields together kind of gave me the opportunity to work with websites and companies such as like Shopify. And I learned how to do like online advertisement. So a lot of, businesses, a lot of them fail sometimes. They don't go the way you want to, but most of the time you learn a lot from these types of businesses and these types of ideas. And that's what's important, is that you put all the things that you've learned into maybe your new business or your new creation, right? The creation never stops. So you don't have to like just create one and just be done with it. You can continue building upon it. And my last one is Two-Man Mats, which is kind of different than my other three. Rather than it being like a company, it's more like a YouTube channel. So I learned, when I was like studying math, I was just like, there's like too many outdated, boring, and lengthy math videos. And I wanted an alternative to this. So I kind of created my own solution, which was this YouTube channel, Two-Man Mats, and immediately became like such a huge hit. Like I had my friends, telling me in my math class that, they've checked out my channel and it was actually really helpful for them. And I also found myself going back to my own videos and then kind of rediscovering concepts I may have forgotten. I'm like, oh, okay, well, this was actually kind of helpful for me. So yeah, I mean, just finding some niches you're really passionate about. It doesn't all have to be one specific thing. As you can see in my 4 businesses, they're kind of different from each other. One math, 2 3D printing, and the other iOS development, right? So you don't have to specifically learn in one niche, but for one business, you should have one idea or one concept that you want to continuously build upon. And making sure that, the idea that you have, it's narrow and not too broad, so that you can actually focus on creating a set solution that will actually be helpful for your business. So as you can see, one common pattern in those 4 businesses that I mentioned is that I mainly said that all of those skills were self-taught. Most of it like during the pandemic, since, we all had so much free time to just do whatever. So I, built up the idea of just learning from online courses and Udemy and just YouTube courses to kind of grasp my understanding and knowledge of these fields that, maybe weren't being taught in school, because, school doesn't have all like unlimited resources, unlimited electives, classes, and clubs. There's a lot of things that maybe you're interested in that your school doesn't have a class or a club for. And, you can create your own club, that specifically dives into that niche. But if you just want to learn more about that field, self-learning is a great way to hone in on those skills. And especially with, just everything being at our fingertips and so many things being like either really at a low cost or just free on YouTube, it's a great way to expand your knowledge, your skill set, and, your portfolio. So resources such as Udemy, LinkedIn, Stack Overflow, even like Discord groups and community groups and YouTube are super, super helpful in expanding your knowledge, or even like introductory courses. Because I know like Udemy and YouTube, which are like the 2 main resources that I used, like they have everything. And like either like $10 courses or just free courses. It's really, really affordable and a great way to expand your skill set. So one example of how I kind of use those self-learning skills to like impact my community was that I had like a summer boot camp for middle schoolers where I taught them how to build 2 of their own apps from scratch in Swift. And I was able to like make some few bucks from it, as I did it during the summer. I had a lot of free time. So that's a great way of kind of learning from your own, but then also using those self-taught knowledge and skills to make a difference and impact in your community. My last note for this slide would be to definitely not be afraid to ask for help. This is something I definitely like struggled with in the beginning, because as I was like, I could just figure this out on my own. But then I realized that just takes so much more time versus just asking somebody, or just reaching out to somebody that you think will be helpful in that specific sector. So as I mentioned, like a great way of, going out of your comfort zone in this regard would be to go on Discord groups or community groups where it's like a pretty tight community and there's a lot of active members on it. People respond within 2 to 3 hours, or even like 30 minutes. So I mean, having that community is really helpful, and you're able to also network with other people, share your portfolio, share the project that you've been working on, and that can even lead to potential internships or job opportunities. And another thing that I'd like to kind of take into consideration is regarding failure. So, when people think about failure, or as soon as, people start not doing as well as they want to, or things aren't really going the way that they want it to go, it's just like, you just give up. And one thing to understand about entrepreneurship is that it's definitely not for everyone. When people say that, they specifically are talking about failures, that you have to be able to have a really, really strong and enduring mentality, where despite the amount of times that you fail in your career or fail in your entrepreneurship business, you just have to keep going, because remember that failure is not only a part of entrepreneurship, it's also a part of life, right? So entrepreneurship, it kind of teaches you, it kind of sharpens up these types of soft skills that you need to be able to have, once you get into jobs, or maybe you're working at a startup or building your own product, wherever or whatever, you want to do in the future. Having those skills that you kind of learn from being an entrepreneur is super, super helpful. And so, as you can see, like at the corners, like just some of my fails regarding like 3D printing. Definitely I've had a lot of my fair share of fails, but honestly, I would say that my favorite business that I've liked working on the most, even though I like all of them equally, would definitely be the one that I failed at the most, because it was also the one that I learned through in the most. And that was like Unicorn Lock, which is like one of my first businesses, where I honestly didn't really know what I was doing, but I knew that I wanted this product to go out to the market, and I wanted to create this, and I knew that there was a niche or a market for this product. And so despite not knowing what I was doing, and of course failing through that journey a lot of times, it was actually the one where I was able to make the most growth and kind of gave me like the best return on investments. Maybe I might have not made like a huge profit, or remember not to think of your business in terms of like money, or in terms of, okay, I'm gonna create a business that's gonna get me a lot of money. Don't think about it in terms of that, because when you start thinking like that, then these ideas like failure and self-learning and just continuing to work on your passions, you'll forget about that. And you want to make sure that you're ready to fail when you're starting out in the entrepreneurship space. Like, I have honestly never met anybody who has created one business and that's just like a one-hit wonder. Definitely people who have created huge, like, even big corporations, like they have gone through so many other businesses that have failed, so many entrepreneurial tasks which didn't really go the way that they wanted to go. And after reflecting and learning through those mistakes and through those experiences, using that experience to maybe better your current business, or build another one that you think is more fit for your passion or the market. So one thing I would recommend doing is that, when you go through all these like failure and hardships, is to definitely reflect. This is something I definitely didn't do in the beginning, because I just kept on working and working. But when you reflect, that's one of the best ways to learn what you did wrong, what could have gone better, and how you can use that mistake to turn it into a success in the future. So two things you can ask yourself is, what could have gone better? What did I learn from this? And you just got to move on and you just got to start over again. There's no reason to just stay in that kind of zone, because that's going to happen a lot of times, and you have to be really comfortable with failing. I know it's a really hard thing to be comfortable with, but as I mentioned, failing is just a part of entrepreneurship. There's no shortcuts to getting rid of that failure. You're just going to have to go through that route. And I feel like it's definitely one of the most rewarding routes as well, because you just learn so much from failing. Okay. And this kind of also ties into my previous idea of failing. So, maybe your product isn't doing as well out in the market as you wish it would, or you're not really, your ads aren't going to the right people, you're not getting people buy your products, or and honestly, any sort of idea, or maybe you're working in a team, it's not really going as well as you thought it would, it's kind of difficult to build that team culture or whatever. So there's many different types of ways that you could fail, not only within your product, but maybe like it's mentality based, or maybe you're working in a collaborative setting. So there's a lot of different ways to kind of think about that situation. And one big thing to take failure, but then use it as a helpful resource, would be to definitely learn how to take feedback. So remember that there's always something to improve on. There's always room for error. Nothing's going to be 100% to your liking or the way that you want it to be. And so it's so important to take feedback, especially constructive feedback, as that will build and grow your business and your mentality, especially, more than anything. And some ways of doing this is maybe having feedback forms when you're giving out your product, sharing your product with a trusted network, even asking close friends and family is a very helpful resource. And just tying this back to, community groups, that can be especially helpful when you're sharing your projects and your products, and you're like, hey, I'd love to get some feedback on this. And, people definitely will not hesitate to give you good feedback. And it's really important to differentiate between good feedback and feedback that is just meant to tear you down. So remember that very few selective people will actually give you feedback that you can actually use to grow your business. So you want to focus in on that. You don't want to ask feedback from literally everybody, but you want to ask feedback from people who you want to maybe target your product to, or people's feedback who they'll give you good feedback, or that they've been in this product, they've been in this space, in this niche for so long. Somebody with some sort of experience, background on that topic will generally give you better feedback than anybody else. And so remember to always listen to constructive feedback and never get emotional over constructive feedback. It will only help you in the future. Don't just put your ego out the front door, don't take anything to heart. I promise you the feedback that you will get is nothing personal. People's goals, righteous people's goals at least, is to only help you expand your business, and declining feedback will only mean that your business will end up declining. So remember that feedback is one of the greatest things that you can do for your business. And it's what a lot of businesses, especially at the early stage, they fail on doing. And that's why, they aren't able to make significant improvements, because they're not willing to hear people talk down upon their product. They're not willing to hear people say that, oh, your product could be better. It could be changed in XYZ way. So this is really important to kind of hone in on feedback, and especially from mentors and, guidance. Having that sort of guidance is very, very especially important. So I can give you an example. So like at this photo right here, this was me and my team at like the UC Berkeley biotech competition, and there was like an 8-week project that we had to do surrounding a problem that we wanted to solve within bioengineering. And that's entrepreneurship in itself, right? Entrepreneurship doesn't have to necessarily be building a huge business and doing a lot of stuff with that business and making sure that business is making millions or making a lot of money, right? Entrepreneurship can just be even mentality based. having an entrepreneurial mindset is just like having a growth mindset, just somebody who's really mentally tough and mentally capable of doing a lot of things, and somebody who's not really emotional in that, business mindset. And so this is one of the first times I was actually able to experience being an entrepreneur, focusing in on a problem, finding a solution, and diving more deep into that solution, looking at it, statistically with metrics, understanding the research aspect. And so during that 8 weeks, we had two mentors, and I would say that having those two mentors were so detrimental to our final project, because the advice and the feedback that they gave, especially, being like two UC Berkeley students, which is what our mentors were, was super, super helpful. They were able to give us really good feedback of what we could improve on, and I think that's what ultimately led us to win first place in that regard. And I think what I learned from that experience is what I genuinely could not have felt like I could learn from any other experience, which is failing and learning how to take feedback without getting emotional and without being very egotistical, just taking feedback for the sake of you knowing that it's going to help your business and help your product at the very end. And I think that's what's most important. And so that's basically the end of my entrepreneurial business idea and my speech. So, if you guys have any other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me either on Discord or LinkedIn. I would love to, maybe give you some advice or give you some tips. If you're currently building a business or building a product, I'd love to help out in any sort of way. So please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you.
I mean, if I could talk just for a little bit, I just wanted to agree with you on a lot of things. I feel like a lot of the things you said is very true in regards to entrepreneurship, the failure, the feedback, the forgot there's one more thing. I believe, right, starting early, like utilizing your youth as a, I wouldn't call it a weapon, but to start something early and to show that everyone you're motivated is a huge factor in convincing people to work with you. So,
Exactly. And I think even doing this like hackathon is also kind of in its own way like entrepreneurship, because you're focusing on a problem, you're building a project that hopefully solves that problem. So I commend you guys for, like organizing this and hosting it. It's really, really impactful.
and I'm happy that all of our participants joined as well, and that hopefully they get an experience that is somewhat like what you've explained.
Yeah, of course. And you can also put my like a contact info in the like maybe the YouTube link bio or anything like that. Like I'm totally fine with people reaching out to me in those areas.
Sounds good. We'll probably be posting it in our resources as well, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Just like send me the link too so I can put it on my network as well.
Alrighty, sounds good. Or need or link to
Oh, I can just send you like my LinkedIn and like my website.
LinkedIn. Yeah.
Yeah, you can just link it in the bio or something.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you so much though.
Thank
Really
you.